It is another glorious day, and in spite of the fact that here where I'm located on this fine Saturday morning, it's a little bit gray and rainy outside, still a glorious day. It's another day that we get to be here together. So put on the brakes, grab a cup of coffee, and join the conversation because it's time for Coffee Breaks with Steve. All right, let me finish my thought. A few months back, 3 months ago, Carol and I had an opportunity to go to England with our dear friends Scott and Jody. And one of the things that was really key in setting the timing and the plans for that trip, that Scott was actually the one who instigated, who pushed this, is he really wanted to see a true jousting tournament. And there is a festival that takes place each year in a town in England called Arundel. And he wanted to see if we could make it to that festival and watch jousting. So we did. We took the train from London to Arundel, spent a day there, got there in the morning before the castle. There's a castle there. Before the castle even opened, before the grounds even opened around their festival. And we got to watch a couple of rounds of something that I personally didn't even know existed. I've been to places like Medieval Times Dinner Theater. I've seen exhibition jousting where they do it for the show. It's still very skilled. It's very well put together. But what happens at Arundel, and as we found out, happens at other places around the world, is actual competitive jousting as a sport, that medieval jousting that is done in modern times. And I had the opportunity to reach out to one of the organizers of that festival on that day and tell her about Coffee Breaks with Steve and invite her to come on the show. Well, that individual and her husband, who are both organizers and both professional jousters, are going to be with us today as our guests. So let me tell you a little bit about them. First of all, Stacy van Dolah-Evans, who is the producer of the Leeds Castle tournament and one of England's finest jousters. Stacy has ridden horses since childhood at a competitive level and progressed into mounted 15th century cavalry and tournaments in 1999 when he joined the UK's finest 15th century cavalry reenactment group, Destiny. He holds a deep interest in military horsemanship throughout history and particularly enjoys recreating British cavalry of the 18th and 19th centuries. This has led him to ride with the Queen's Royal Lancers display team at such events as Royal Military Tournament in the presence of Her Majesty the Queen. Stacy regularly competes internationally and comes to the tournament with an impressive winning record. He is the reigning champion of the Arundel International Tournament, having secured the individual title in 2017. Actually, I think this is a few years old, but he was the reigning champion at that time. In 2016, he won victory in jousting and melee at the Royal Armories and has also had victories in France and America. This was on the back of a successful season in 2015, winning the individual jousting championship and mounted melee in Poland and the team championship at the Arundel International Tournament. Stacy has also been a holder of the Queen's Jubilee Horn and the Sword of Honor, the Royal Armory's coveted jousting trophies. Kyle van Dolah-Evans hails from San Diego, California, where she started riding at the age of 3. Kyle was an avid eventer until graduate school. Since her move to the UK in 2010, she has become an enthusiastic participant in historical riding events ranging from Victorian side saddle gymkhanas and Roman cavalry games to 15th century skill at arms competitions. Kyle is the co-organizer of the international jousting tournaments at Arundel and Leeds Castle and an expert on horsemanship, chivalry, and jousting tournaments. As the mother of twin boys, she is also rapidly becoming an expert toddler wrangler. Although Kyle has many years of experience in the saddle, she only started jousting in 2023 at King Charles Cup for the Royal Armories. She has now competed in 2 international jousts in England and in Norway. Now you can begin to understand, I believe, why we thought it would be so fascinating to have this couple join us as our guest today. So here is my conversation with Stacy and Kyle Van Dolah-Evans. Well, Stacy and Kyle, thank you so much for joining us on Coffee Breaks with Steve. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Glad we could make it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Steve.
And you're, of course, tuning in from England, and I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about where you each come from and how you ended up meeting and getting together. Whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I'll start that one. Yeah, I'm obviously not a native of England. I was originally from San Diego, born and raised. And I went over in about 2012 for a sabbatical. But I clearly didn't understand the concept well because I've ended up staying now permanently and have a mortgage and I'm married with twins. So I need to do a sabbatical from my job. But I was riding in Victorian side saddle display events and doing all sorts of stuff. And the gentleman accompanying us in there, who was just supposed to ride around and talk about how wonderful the ladies looked, he fell off and broke his collarbone. So we needed another gentleman to step in. And Stacy was roped in to joining us. So kind of a bit begrudgingly because he wasn't used to just riding around and going, well done.
And is that how you first met Stacy?
That is exactly how I first met Stacy. So he was dragged kicking and screaming to one of our side saddle training shows for the Victorian displays.
Oh my gosh.
And that was in early 2012.
And where was that?
That was Peterborough. It was where we first met. Yeah, but we did displays for English heritage all around the country. And
yeah, so ironically, one of my best friends, Nigel Amos, it's one of his favorite bar stories. He's the reason we got married is because he broke his collarbone.
It's actually the gentleman when you came to watch us at Arundel, Steve. It's the gentleman who was commentating with me. Is the man who fell off and broke his collarbone. Is how we met.
So there's a connection there. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And is that how you remember the first meeting, Stacy? Is that how you recall that you and Kyle? Do you remember first meeting Kyle and first spotting her at that event?
I would say yes, but I'd been drinking quite a lot that day, Steve, to be honest with you, because I really didn't want to be there. This story doesn't paint me in a good picture, so I'm probably going to breeze over
the nice version.
Well, Victorian riding is one thing, but the part of the reason that we wanted you to come here and talk is because you're both involved in something that I really think is unique. Now, a lot of people know about exhibition jousting. I have been to dinner theater types of performances and certainly there's still a tremendous amount of sport there and there's a tremendous amount of excitement, but it's staged. And you two are involved in competitive jousting. And I'm just curious about how you got involved in that, first of all, and what elements of your background led to you finding and discovering or getting involved in jousting as a competition sport.
Well, I was following Stacy's lead, so I'll let him take the first answer on this one of how he got in.
So I've been jousting now since 2000, so probably about 24 years, roughly. Wow. Basically, jousting was really founded, the type of sports jousting we do today was really founded and pioneered out of the Royal Armouries. And then basically in 2000, English Heritage wanted to take that out onto the road, so take it outside of the Royal Armouries. And so that's what we did. And we really kind of pioneered the kind of foundations of, what it was to be to do jousting. Now, I wouldn't say it really hit the heights of what we have today back then, but it was really the foundation of basically the idea of, you get some armor, you ride towards each other, you hit each other, you need a scoring system. And we were doing shows like a lot of the shows today, but they weren't really choreographed. And that really kind of led into where we are, today. And Arundel was started probably realistically in the format it is today in around 2014, I would say.
Yeah. So Kyle, then how did you end up have you ever actually yourself jousted, or have you been more involved at the level of kind of organizing?
Both. So I was a 3-day eventer before I left California. So I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie on horseback. So I've been riding since I was about 3 years old. And so when I met Stacy and he was doing these 15th century jousting shows, and there were roles for women who weren't in armor. And I thought, oh, that'd be kind of cool. I haven't done any of that. So let's give that a go. And then I got, really sick of just sitting on the sidelines and watching everyone else joust. And they were lauded as these amazing people. And some of them can't ride to save their lives. And I've kind of always been a want to bet sort of person. So,
Yeah.
And somebody said, you can't joust. And I kind of went, want to bet. So, yeah. And so now, I've just I've only just started my competitive jousting career. Started in, what was it, 2022, 2023, the first joust? Yeah, it's new into competitive jousting. I've been doing training for it for a long time. So I've just started traveling now internationally for some of the tournaments, which is amazing. So it's really fun. Cool. But I'm also heavily involved in the organizing. And I always like to say that organizing jousters is like wrangling kittens. In fact, I think wrangling kittens is easier. I do a lot of kitten wrangling.
I could see that. I could kind of sense that with some of the personalities that we saw competing at Arndale. A little bit for maybe those who are uninitiated and maybe their only introduction to jousting has been through some of the exhibitions or through seeing movies like, A Knight's Tale or something. Where did jousting originate and what was its purpose?
So jousting was jousting historically was around war and tournaments and, knightly prowess, lots of capturing people and ransoming them back. But when you talk about tournaments, that's a very different thing. Tournaments, as they grew for the 1400s and 1500s, became less about the combat and more about the, courtly love and, the position at court and all this types of things. So what we do today, in a sense, what we call modern day sports jousting, isn't really what they did at all. What they did wasn't scored on points. It was scored on, well, how much you liked, basically. How was your prowess in court, basically, at this point in history. And by the time you get into the Tudor period, there's still the competitiveness of hitting each other and striking each other and that whole piece. But then you kind of get into the Elizabethan period, and it kind of starts to phase out because it's not about the actual combat side of it. It's all about the theatrical side of it. They start dressing up like Arthurian knights, like the Renaissance fairs that you see today, essentially, from that point of view. And I know Carl's got her own take on this as well from an American standpoint, how she views it.
Yeah. Let me start by saying we all love The Knight's Tale. We love that movie. Every single jouster, and it is a perennial favorite. We think it's amazing. Many historians think it's amazing too. And there are aspects of it that really did occur in the pageantry of the historic jousts. But it's the difference of the exhibition versus the competitive jousting, that if you go your average American, and it's how I got to know jousting was at medieval times as a kid, and how that great time at the dinner theater and then the Ren fairs. They are wonderful shows, but that's what they are. They're shows by really talented stunt people doing stuff I can't do to save my life. It's really talented, but it's not the sport of jousting. It is a wonderful display and a show, and takes a lot of talent and skill and rehearsal. And then now the modern sports jousting and the competitive aspect of it, it's really brings that sport objectiveness back into it, of the scoring system. And there's some talks of people wanting to get cameras on it, so GoPros, and so you can get that, the video replay. And trying to modernize it. And when you look at that, every point matters, and they want me to double check those scores when we're not announcing them. It's not, well, whatever, we had a great time.
We had fun. And it's still a fantastic show. But talk a little bit about the rules and the scoring in competitive jousting, how that works.
All right, to break it down in the most simplistic form, is that it's where you hit your opponent is what's going to get you the points. With the tip of your lance, that the very end of the coronal is just the pronged tip that's there. And if you hit to the targe or the shield, it's up there at the left-hand shoulder, you'll get 3 points. If you hit the body, you get 2 points. You hit the arm, you get 1 point. And at Arundel, we allow for hits on the head for 3 points. Some tournaments mark them as illegal strikes because it's we make the joke that it's not very nice to hit your friend in the head with a big stick, but sometimes people can get hurt if their helmet isn't properly done and fitted. You're hitting somebody with a big stick in the head. You better make sure their armor works. So, and then how much you break the lance also works in our English tournaments. If you've broken the lance more than halfway, you get an extra point because it indicates you've hit them with enough power or force. Other tournaments just go, is it broken or not? It's an all or nothing sort of situation. So that's the basics of how the scoring is. And so it's all about accuracy. It's not about smashing your opponent out of the saddle. It's can you precisely hit them right in the middle of that target area.
And in fact, whereas, again, and I'm also a lover of the movie Knight's Tale, but whereas part of in that movie, one of the things that they make a big deal of is actually points or actually winning an opponent's horse if you knock them out of the saddle. And really in the tournaments that you are doing and organizing and supervising, that is not at all the goal. You don't want to be knocking anybody off their horse.
No, not at all.
These armors are they range between 8 and 25,000 pounds. So like could be up to $30,000. So it's like taking your Ferrari and then driving it into a wall. You don't really want to be doing that.
And while there's competition here, I mean, et cetera, safety is a key element of everything that you're doing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And is all of our armors, they are, when you're looking at the level of Arundel and some of the tournaments we're running, you're looking at some of the best of the best. These are people who have trained for years. They've got all the custom fit armor. We're not somebody who's decided last week they wanted to give it a go. So your armor is custom fit, made for your body. But even that, the accidents still do happen. With any sport, you still have accidents and injuries. Exactly. And it's a full contact sport. Jousting is unique in that it's one of the full contact sports where you do nothing to protect yourself. Your job is to take the hit. You just have to take it. You can't. In fact, there's a couple people and they're quite naughty. They like to roll their shoulder and dodge that and make it a little bit. It's bad sportsmanship. It's just you're supposed to make yourself easy to hit and so your armor has to work. And there's a lot of
there's a lot of nuances in jousting. Everyone thinks you basically just run towards each other and hit each other. You're like, oh, well, great, that's pretty simple. The thing is, when you're riding at some of the top tournaments in the world, you are seeing the best of the best. These people don't miss that often. So you're talking points. A single point of breakage, a single point of horsemanship, a single point of something is going to make a massive difference at this level, because it's how much strike, how hard you hit makes a big impact. And the riders are encouraged to do that, But like Carl said, it's a very psychological sport because you don't know how hard you're going to get hit. The rider chooses in sports jousting how hard they want to hit you based on how hard they couch the lance and how hard they want to hold on to it. And some people like to strike really hard, but that has risks. Phil Leach is a classic example, one of the top jousters in the world. We're in the champion of champions at Arundel last year. In the final 4 passes, strikes super hard, drops his lance, which means he loses his breakage point. So the look on his face as he's riding down is just one of sheer dismay. Because he knows he's lost. At this point, he's lost. The guy going next, all he's got to do is strike the Taj. He's won because he lost that 1 point. But that didn't happen. And Nigel calls this the Wheel of Fortune. I call it the Wheel of Horses, but because the horses are the massive part. Right? The Wheel of Fortune plays a massive part because that guy missed. That guy hasn't missed all week, 6 days of international sports days, not missed once. And yet when it absolutely counted, when all the pressure was on and he could have won, he didn't. And that's competitive jousting.
And Stacy talked about the wheel of horses and the horsemanship, and the horse, what horse you're on makes a huge difference in your skill. But also, the horsemanship is a great equalizer. So, like all of the other equestrian events in modern sports, it's men and women compete equally. But also, it's a full contact sport, which is also very unique because there's not any other full contact sports where men and women compete equally. But the great equalizer is their horsemanship, and that you can get a smaller woman who can just ride anything and take the hit. And we have Marie Baron from France. She weighs about 130 pounds out of her armor, and she hits like a freight train. And she is a top competitor. So it's she can face up with some of the guys that weigh well over 200 pounds, and it's not a big deal because it's the horse she uses. She has the ability to wrap her legs around that horse. She's a phenomenal rider, and just uses the power and force and the weight of the horse to carry through her hits. So it's kind of. It's the wheel of horses. It's the horsemanship. How well can you ride that horse and take the punch? Yeah.
We talked about at Arundel when I was there and saw it, there were teams from a variety of countries, and you've mentioned different places. Where all now is competitive jousting popular, and where are teams coming from, and where do the two of you, in your involvement with competitive jousting, where do you tour and where do you go with that?
Yeah, there's around the world is the quick and easy answer. Obviously, there's teams in England. This last year at Arundel, we had teams from Portugal, France. There's also teams in Australia. Scandinavian countries have a big output. So Canada, United States. There's all sorts of.
So sports jousting has really grown in popularity since the Victorian period. I mean, there's this thing called the Eglinton tournament. I mean, jousting disappeared after the Elizabethan period. Yeah, okay, it just dies off. No one's interested in it. It's boring. Blah blah blah. The Victorians, being the Victorians, suddenly got jousting. We need to bring this back into life. So this whole thing, you can find it. It's a book called the Tournament of the Umbrella. Yeah, it's an hilarious read about a bunch of very eccentric Victorians who have too much money and not enough brains who put on this tournament, which in the worst part of the country where it rains horrifically. Yeah. So basically it gained popularity back in the Victorian period. And then people started finding armours and, they started doing stuff, and then people started watching shows, and then Knight's Tale came out and it had a real resurgence. So sports jousting, or modern day sports jousting as we call it today, has really grown across the world. You've got big tournaments in Australia, big tournaments in Russia, big tournaments in Poland, France, America, Canada, Norway, obviously the UK. All over the world now, you've got a bunch of people, and not just, who are working at the very top level. But sports jousting is also the same as Formula One. And I'm sure Carl's got an American version of this, where you've got Formula 1, 2, 3, and 4. Formula 1 is someone like Arundel. Arundel is the Super Bowl of international sports jousting. Yeah, it's one of the top international sports, the Wimbledon for us of sports jousting.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's the Duke of Norfolk's tournament. Yeah, it's the only tournament in the world where you're not paired with a horse. You have to ride lots of different horses through this whole chaos of things. So it's one of the hardest tournaments in the world to win. But there are lots of other fantastic tournaments as well, with 3-day tournaments and 2-day tournaments. So it's really gained popularity. And it continues to grow. Same as the scoring system you talked about earlier. People say, "Oh, is it ever going to be an Olympic sport?" It's like, probably not, but more than likely not, to be honest with you. One, because it's very niche. Secondly, it's very expensive. But if it ever did become something like that, it wouldn't be what we did anyway. If you take fencing is a good example. If you look at modern day fencing in the Olympics, is it what they did in the Renaissance fairs? Not at all. No, they use foils and electronic scoring systems, so they just make it a completely different thing from what it is anyway, for a mass audience, and that's what it would have to become, which is fair enough.
Yeah, you'd have to standardize the scoring systems. Each of the different countries have slightly different techniques and scoring styles, and different styles of lances and how they hit. So I just came back from a tournament in Norway where the lances were made in a slightly different way, and those suckers will they hurt a lot more?
She's got a lot of bruises.
But so it's less. It's although there are many different countries that have modern sports jousting, there's enough differences to prevent an Olympic event as it is currently. But I know, Stacy, you've traveled the world. We've done tournaments in Canada, Australia. I know there's tournaments starting in Russia. In Italy as well. All right, so
it's always amusing when you go through when we're going through Singapore on our way to Australia, and they pulled the bag to one side, and they're like, "So what's this?" And I'm like, "Well, it's armor." And they're like, "Is it antique?" No, it's my sports equipment. And they're like, "Really? Sports equipment?"
Yeah.
So it looks like sports equipment.
Yeah. It's going through immigration in Norway. Similar thing. He's like, "You're here for what?" And he's looking at me. Oh no, that's me. Yeah, I know. I'm about 125 pounds soaking wet, but I'm the one doing the jousting.
We'll have to pull out your phone with pictures and videos just to prove to them. Look, this is what happened.
Yeah. All right. So it's it is a fun and international, but because of that, we get to meet a whole bunch of different people from around the world and different techniques and different styles. So that makes it a lot of fun.
And like I say, it's a very strong community that's very well connected. I mean, people say like, how do you organise tournaments? How do you get invited to tournaments? To be honest, it's mostly organised by the tournament directors, and there's a bunch of tournament directors around the world. I'm one of them. Carl's one of them. Andrew McKinnon's another one. Mikhail Sard. I could go on. Pella is another one. There's lots and lots of tournament directors around the world who organise tournaments. Dimitri in Russia, as an example, and there's the guys in Canada. So
yeah, it is word in its reputation that people have seen you. They've seen you scoring well. They know that you're going to be a good rider, that you're going to be safe. A lot of it is the lances. The weight of the lances are not huge, but it's not insignificant. And being able to have good lance control means that you're not going to be riding down the tilt rail, that fence in the middle, waving your lance around and being a danger to yourself and your fellow competitor. So are you going to be a safe person to have? Are you going to be somebody we want to have at our tournament? Or are you going to be a pain in the butt to manage?
Yeah.
You might be some of the best in the world, but if you're too high maintenance, you might not get invited to a lot of tournaments because you have to be adaptable if you're going to travel the world to the different styles and scoring systems. And we've had some people at Arundel come phenomenal in their own country, amazing, and they just haven't adjusted to the English style and the style of the tournaments and haven't done as well.
For each of you, what are your current roles and involvement in jousting tournaments? And I'm also curious because you both have underneath your name here a label that says DPH Events Limited, and I'm curious about that and the role of that organization with the things that you do.
Yeah. DPH Events Limited is the company that Stacy started. It's Destrier Pro Historical Events. So Destrier being the warhorse. All right, and that's your company that you started. Oh gosh, years ago. Long time ago.
You less gray hairs.
Not only for the competitive sports jousting tournament, but also for some of the displays, like when Stacy is dressed as St. George and has to go slay a giant cloth dragon for children's show. It's the same sort of event. So it covers that all the historical events that we do.
Yeah. I mean, my main focus and also it's like I like to go and joust at other people's tournaments. In fact, I actually don't particularly like jousting in my own tournaments because it's like cooking and when you cook a meal and it's like everyone else is enjoying the meal and you're kind of enjoying the meal, but you're the one who did all the work to create the meal, basically. There's a lot more stress there. Yeah. So I much prefer to go and joust at other people's tournaments. But we do other things as well, like Carl was saying, just for fun. But
at the competitive tournaments, we like to think Stacy does really a lot of the amazing legwork getting us to the day one of the tournament, meeting with the different clients, talking to them what they want. We hammer out the rules beforehand. We pick the competitors. Stacy does a lot of this, of vetting the different competitors with the different tournament directors around the world. So he does a phenomenal amount of work prior to the start of the tournament. And as we get closer to the tournament is when more of maybe checking the rules and am I happy with it? And I say I'm definitely checking the rules because on day one of the tournament, it's now my job to take over and be the head judge, or as in the competitions, it's called the marshal of the field. And that's where I become, judge, jury, and executioner, essentially, on the field. So the rule book is then my domain, and the physical scheduling of it. Once we've hit day one, everything up until then is absolutely Stacy does a lot of the grunt work for that.
And I think it's also important that Kyle, what I think is really cool as well, with Kyle being the marshal, is she's also a jouster. So she gets it. No one can really understand what it's like to be in a competitive sports. When you put that helmet on, when on a horse you don't know, it's thousands of people around you, and you've got 5 passes, and every single pass is like, it's so intense. One mistake, she gets all that. And sometimes you just do, you're looking at the jouster on the horse, and you're like, why? what are you doing, man? I mean, you're spinning around in circles. Well, what are you doing? Why have you even got your lance? The guy's not even ready, or the woman's not ready. They're over there. So it's like, what's going on? That's because you get cooked. You can cook yourself inside your own pressure cooker of a helmet.
Yeah. And so it's I wrangle the kittens once the show starts, and some of that's the ground crew. We have a phenomenal team around us that does a lot of the ground crew setup, because as great as we all are as jousters and riding around in costume in front of the audience, we need the people on the ground to get the arena set up for us, to physically hand the equipment up and down. A jouster can't even put on their own armor. Stacy can at least get his leg armor on without help. I do not. I need to be strapped in to every bit of my armor except for the part that goes around my calves. So I need the people on the ground around me. I need my support crew. We call it kind of the formula, the pit crew. They are your pit crew. Yeah. They're the ones responsible for telling you what's going on. I have less visibility to the sides than Stacy's armor does, so I need my pit crew to tell me what's going on down the other end of the arena, because I can't see it. And so,
but equally, it's like, I'm a huge NFL fan. Bears fan from back in the day. Troy Emmett Smith. They've never won anything since the like the 80s. But hey, one day we'll make a resurgence.
You have an unhealthy man crush on Aaron Rodgers, so that's
Aaron Rodgers. There's so much going on there. But basically, there's a whole piece around yourself as the jouster and the squire, who's your person as well. I've just jousted with Kyle in Norway. The person on the ground, like you say, you can't see a lot. You can't. All your senses are kind of minimized. So what you've got is what you're looking at basically. So having someone on the ground you really trust, who knows you, who can talk you through that. I've just jousted at a tournament at the Royal Armouries with a guy called Simon. Simon John, he didn't joust particularly well the first day, and that's because his son, who is his squire, wasn't there. And actually, he scored out of a maximum of 40 points on the first day, which is what I scored. He scored 10. But the second day, he did much better, and that's because his son was coaching him. He's like, Dad, listen, don't hunt for it. Listen, lance up, bang, bang, bang. You need that kind of pit crew, which is what you get with the quarterback and their personal coach on the sidelines in the NFL or whatever. So
Yeah, it is a fascinating sport, and my hope is that by bringing attention to this, more people perhaps in various parts of the world who tune in will consider looking up where they might find some competitive jousting in their areas. So Stacy and Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Coffee Breaks with Steve. Thank you so much for bringing to light this amazing sport. I know that I was impressed, fascinated, and very much enjoyed seeing it when we were in Arndale. And I look forward to finding it again, whether it's back in England or in my own neck of the woods. So take care of yourselves and good luck to you.
Thank you
very much. Lovely to chat with you.
All right. Listen, is there anybody who thinks that was not an absolutely fascinating conversation? Amazing. And again, my thanks to Stacy and Kyle for taking the time to join us and to tell us so much about this unique, extraordinary sport, who's got a story to come and share it with us. And then I please ask you, I'm reminding you, we also have a YouTube channel. It's very simple. We're putting the link for the YouTube channel in the chat right now, but it's very easy to find. You can go to YouTube and look up Coffee Breaks with Steve, or put in that link, and it will take you to our channel. And we share every single video that we put on live is also on YouTube. And that's the place that we can most easily reach out to people anywhere in the world. More people tune into YouTube than are on Facebook. And so for people to come in and hear these stories, can you imagine with jousting taking off the way it is and the way it has been over the last couple of decades around the world, for more people to learn about competitive jousting and to be able to find where it may be taking place in their area? And so many amazing stories. If you're not already subscribed to our channel, would you go there after the show and click to become a subscriber and click on some of the videos, watch them. If you missed some videos in the past and you want to watch some of our episodes and meet some of our guests, you can go there and do that. But if you have already subscribed to our channel, would you please take that link, send out your own emails to your friends, to your family member, to your colleagues, and let them know why you think they should be tuning into, subscribing to Coffee Breaks with Steve and tuning in. Not about me. It's about these stories. It's about these guests and all the things that you also find most fascinating about this show. Thank you for tuning in today. I want to say a special thank you once again to Stacy and Kyle Van Dolah-Evans for joining us on the show, for sharing amazing story, but also for all of you. You are part of this conversation. You're part of the family. And also just a reminder, in the States, if you're tuning in from the United States, we have an election coming up in just a handful of days this coming week. And that's one of the ways that you can make a difference. Please make sure that if you are not registered to vote, and you can vote at the last minute, you can register at the last minute in your state, do so, and cast your vote and be a part of the important decisions that need to be made. And I just also want to remind you that in addition to voting, we all have things that we are passionate about. We all have things that are meaningful to us. So please find a way to make a difference in your world this week. God bless you. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Coffee Break.